And we're back now with the panel. We asked you 4 questions for the panel, and we got this on Twitter from Paul J. Elliott. He tweets, Hillary Clinton, sponsored by Goldman Sachs, a progressive. Julie, how badly do you think that the big speaking fees and the millions of dollars in campaign contributions from Wall Street, how badly do you think that's hurting Clinton?
I think it's where she's most vulnerable. I think, put the emails aside, I know that everyone wants to talk about that. I think opinions on that are baked in, but she doesn't have a good answer on why she accepted the money for these speaking fees. I think in part because there isn't a great answer. It was widely expected that she would run for president, and she still went to these banks. We haven't seen what she said when she spoke to Wall Street executives. And every time that Bernie Sanders brings that up, it reinforces a narrative about her, but also a narrative about him.
Do you think, because it came up in the debate, whether she would release the transcripts, and I love that her pollster said, I don't think voters are interested, like he's going to decide what voters are interested in. Do you think she can make that stick, not release those transcripts?
I think that now that the question has been asked, I think that it becomes a lot harder for her to not release them. At the same time, we have no idea what's in those speeches, so there could be a reason why they don't want to release them.
Bret, what struck me watching that really interesting Democratic debate this week is that the Clinton coronation is over, and even if Hillary Clinton ends up winning the nomination, it's only going to be after a long, bitter battle with Bernie Sanders that's going to keep pushing her further and further to the left.
No, that's exactly right. And I went to that event this week with Joel Bennison, the chief strategist for Hillary Clinton, in which they said that Quinnipiac poll is an outlier, and they think by the time they get to South Carolina, everything is going to get back together for Hillary Clinton. The problem is that momentum means something. And movements mean something. And if Bernie Sanders has a huge win here in New Hampshire, he's going to have a bounce that's going to, give him a second look by all kinds of different parts of the Democratic Party.
In addition to which, he's got millions of dollars in the bank. There's nothing that's going to force him to get out of this race.
Exactly. And that is a problem for Hillary Clinton. If she's vulnerable, I agree. I think that this Wall Street thing is a big vulnerability. And what's in that transcript, maybe it's some warm and fuzzy language about Goldman Sachs. But the email thing, let's not forget about it. Well, it is serious.
And I want to get to that because in the debate, Clinton was asked how confident she is that the FBI investigation will turn up nothing about her private emails and classified information on that. Here was her response.
I am 100% confident. This is a security review that was requested. It is being carried out. It will be resolved.
Governor Sununu, how serious do you think the Clinton email scandal is? And what about Clinton's defense, her latest defense, which is, well, some classified information turned up on Colin Powell's private email, turned up on the emails, private emails of some of Condi Rice's aides. In effect, everyone does it.
6 months ago, I was worried about her coronation. Now I'm worried that she's not going to get the nomination. The emails are a serious issue. Bernie has not used them aggressively. She's gotten a free ride in that whole process, and I don't think she understands how close she is to real political and legal trouble with what's coming through the FBI. I think the behind-the-scenes activity of the Democratic Party in trying to keep Joe Biden propped up and ready tells more about what her situation is than anything else.
How do you see?
I think they are hoping that Joe is ready to jump in quickly. Some of the big donors are making commitments to him that if he does have to do it, they will be there. They're just getting ready for Plan B.
James, your sense, are voters here following the email scandal specifically, or does it show up more just in a perception of her on the issues of honesty and trustworthiness?
Yeah, it obviously did impact her trustworthiness. You saw those numbers dive since the spring, heading all the way into that 11-hour testimony. It was talking about the emails. But in terms of Democratic primary voters, I mean, Julie's right. They don't care. This is a general election issue. There's no doubt about it. And how that flips into...
You don't think it's hurting her at all in the primaries? I mean, part of her problem with Bernie Sanders is this...
I think it adds into this idea of, the Clintons, and are there question marks that we have in terms of a Democratic primary voter versus sort of the enthusiasm that you have towards Bernie Sanders. But I think the two questions right now is something that we know and something that we don't know. Something that we know is that Bernie Sanders raised a lot of money. That is probably the most important metric right now. He's raised more money than Hillary Clinton did in the last quarter. That's a really important metric that means he can last on. We focus always on these polls, what's going to happen next and next and next, but then it gets to this question of if. And if, what Bret said, if he does really well here. I don't know. What is really well? Is really well winning by 10 points? That sounds pretty good. Is winning well if he wins by 6 points? There is a perception that his lead here is not that big inside both campaigns.
Bret, after watching the Democratic debate and seeing how, one, he argued with her on even terms and seemed to really get under her skin, and after watching him draw even, not in New Hampshire, but in the national polls, should we start taking Bernie Sanders more seriously as a potential Democratic nominee?
Listen, it's easy to buy into the Clinton argument that a number of states don't line up for Bernie Sanders. And in the African-American community, so far, he does not have a lot of support. That can change. I don't think it's a fantasy to believe that Bernie Sanders could win other states. I also come back to here in New Hampshire, these undeclared voters. And they could shift for Bernie Sanders in a vote against Hillary Clinton. They could decide that day, or they could play in the Republican Party. That's what's so fascinating about this state in particular.
Julie, 30 seconds. I mean, you know, we've all thought, well, he's an interesting diversion, but he's a democratic socialist. He'll eventually go away. Is it time to start taking Bernie Sanders more seriously as a potential nominee?
I would like to see how he does in Super Tuesday states in the South. If he can stay competitive with Clinton in the delegate count there, then I think we definitely need to take him seriously as a potential nominee. But even so, I think we need to take him seriously as someone who will push her for a long time in this race.
The Democratic Party will never let Bernie be their nominee.
All right. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday back in Washington, except for Governor Sununu, who I assume has something better to do. Up next.
By far.